Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. We come to you live once again. I am Seahawks Brendan Nelson, and we are doing our weekly show with the Hawks Nest. Brandon, how you doing this week?
I'm doing amazing, brother. Thank you for having me on. Loving life.
hmm Yeah. So the off season, it's officially here. The no more games left to play this year. We've got left are the important dates on the NFL offseason calendar, and there's truly nothing to get in the way of it anymore. So we're going to have a lot of stuff to talk about this offseason. We're going to have a lot of stuff to talk about as things go on, and obviously it's a constantly morphing thing. But this week, I think the main area of interest for Seahawks fans is going to be the changes to the coaching staff, and there were quite a few. So to step back a little bit, last week we were thinking we were not going to get Sean Desai, right? It looked bad. And then I think it was Saturday we got the word that we got him. So let's start there. We get Sean Desai as an associate head coach -- defense, whatever that means. So
job titles.
yeah. Knowing that he is in, what are you thinking?
Well, I think it's two things that came with this. Number one, the fact that he wasn't an easy get, to me, probably speaks to the fact that certainly Carroll is having to maybe give up a little of his old ground here a little bit. And this is what we're at least hearing from, of course, Jake Keeps at 710, which is that Carroll did say, okay, you're saying to come aboard, you want autonomy over the game call planning, a little bit with the personnel stuff. I will give you that if that's what it takes to get you in the door. If that's what it takes to get you to sign on the dotted line, right? Those last negotiation points. That's encouraging for us because I think both of us have wanted to see that, is him to entrust more in some of his assistants and people to do the job rather than feeling like he's got to run the whole show and be in on everything. So that part was firstly great. Bringing in a guy like Sean Desai is a coaching prospect, kind of the likes of which we haven't really brought in here as of recent. It's been a lot of internal hiring, a lot of bringing guys up through, and as we've talked about, that's not usually getting the best candidate. You've got a nationwide of coaches in the NFL, not just I'm talking assistants and heads all across the board. You got NCAA, you got a lot of guys out there that you can go look for as prospects. I think Pete originally plucked Gus Bradley from North Dakota State or something as a coach. So you've had the returns on this before. This is more into going in that role of things, and it really does encourage me. Sean's got a ton of heat behind him as far as a lot of people in the NFL backing him. I did quite a bit of research and listening to what players who've been under him and what they had to say. And obviously you're going to hear nothing usually but good things in coaches unless they're just bastards. But with him, it was overwhelming praise. So this is a home run for me, Brendan. It makes the Clint Hurt signing as the defensive coordinator or elevating of defensive coordinator that much more palpable to me. I can get this one down now, and I can get some generated excitement from it because I think it required this to get to that point. He needed this kind of guy. He himself said that today and recently in his press conference. We needed Desai here. That was an important get. So it brought the whole, just like the rug from Big Lebowski, it brings the room together. Desai brings the room together.
Yeah, he really does. And it's definitely going to be interesting to see how this all comes together. I think that's the one concern that some people have: too many cooks in this kitchen. Because previously, in the last 4 seasons, the impression that I got about the way this defense was run, and we don't know if this was true or not, but the impression that I got was that Carroll had a big hand in putting together the game plan and scheme during the week, and then Norton was calling the plays.
Mm-hmm.
So now, hopefully, based off what I'm hearing, it sounds like you're going to see a lot of Sean Desai be the guy who puts together the game plan during the week, and then Hurts calling the plays.
Right.
So that frees up Carroll to be more of just a head coach, which is a win.
And I think to just back up what you're saying on this, it's confirmed for us now at this point, Brendan. You get it from the player's mouth. The player who played last year on the defense, player who's played at a high level on that defense the last couple of years, a player who has a financial imperative to not be saying what he's saying. To not be saying what he's saying, that's Quandre Diggs. a couple of days ago when he came out speaking to the too many cooks in the kitchen stuff, that there's too many people in on this, and that it specifically needs to be more of layering it back. And I don't look at the combination of Desai to Hurt as too many cooks. It's the Carroll stay back out of this and let them trust them in that process. Just you're here, there, and there to help, but don't be as much in on it like you're another de facto assistant defensive coordinator coach with everybody else. Be the head coach, be in that role of things. It's hard enough to do in itself.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the conversations that guys like Clint Hurt have been having with the media lately have been about how things need to change. Hurt had a quote from, it might have been earlier today, it might have been yesterday, about how, no, I've been given autonomy to do what I need to do with this defense. And he also said, we need to get more aggressive. That's one thing you're going to see. You're not going to see so many defensive linemen dropping into coverage. I think he made a lot of fans just when he said that. Yeah. Because that's something that it just didn't work here. I'm not saying it's always bad, but it seems like we just couldn't make it work. Whenever we drop defensive linemen back into coverage, it just kind of looks stupid. It wasn't like those old Rex Ryan defenses where they would drop a defensive lineman into coverage and he would get a pick six. It just never worked.
Well, as I say, it's those you dropped men back in coverage back in the day because you were running what was essentially a zone blitz. You stack the box up, and then you're going to overload to one side, and then you drop back to the other side, and hopefully it's a pick waiting to happen because the quarterback's going to his hot read. So he's going to his 3-step drop, ball at his hands to that side of the field. But when you're doing it from a 4-man front to go to a 3-man front to drop an extra man into zone, it is like it's like speaking Spanish by way of Latin or something. I don't know. It just doesn't, it's not contextually why people did that in the first place. Guys like Buddy Ryan or Blitzburg in Pittsburgh, they didn't do this with that thought process at play. It was always to show an overload front, and then the quarterback never knows which guy it is that's going to drop in coverage. It might even be a defensive tackle. It might be a nose guard tackle. You never know. That was the whole point of it. But it doesn't throw off a quarterback to suddenly see a 4-man front to a 3-man front. That doesn't confuse him a whole bunch. And that lineman's not going to do a whole lot in coverage when he does drop back.
Right. So there's a lot of stuff about what has been said about the defense lately to like. But I want to talk about one thing that I'm not so sure about that came out of the Clint Hurt press conference. It sounded like the way he was talking, we were going to shift towards more of a hybrid defense because he talked about the Fangio 3-4, talked about running some 3-4 looks. So that is what you would call a hybrid defense. You go back and forth between a 4-3 and a 3-4 situationally. So on the one hand, I like the 3-4 because I think it's going to help Jamal Adams play better. And we do have some guys who can definitely play in the 3-4. My concern would be forcing players to play in the 3-4 who can't do it. Because I'm pretty sure Carlos Dunlap left the Bengals because they were trying to have him play in a 3-4 and he couldn't do it. I'm pretty sure that's why he fell off a cliff at the end. I don't think Alton Robinson can play 3-4 outside linebacker either. Darrell Taylor can. I know that. I think Benson Mayoa could, if not that he would be great anyway, but he would be adequate at it. So that would be one thing that I'm a little hung up on here. Are we going to force players into a role they cannot fill with this hybrid defense thing? Because most of the guys we have here have spent their whole careers playing in a 4-3.
I mean, it's a big question that I don't know that we can actually answer. When you go to more of an attacking scheme, for instance, Brendan, you need to find guys that are good at blitzing. You need to look at guys in scouting and free agency and people you're bringing aboard who have that as a main priority type skill set in what they do. They have other things they can do as well, right? But we're getting outside linebacker. How can he blitz? You've never been asking that question with any of these positions in the past. You've got to now ask that under this light. And if you're not, you're going to end up with players that, to your point, playing out of position. When you look at the down line right now, if you're talking about going to 3-4 conceptual stuff, it's going to be a little hard with the personnel you got right now to a degree. I mean, Al Woods, Brian Monet can do some nose guard stuff. Do you have the defensive ends on the side that are big enough? I mean, not really. And again, Dunlap's not going to want to do that. Arlen Robinson's not going to want to do that. It's a very thankless the 3-4 defensive end is one of the ultimate thankless jobs on a defense as far as you don't get any spotlight or show. So I agree with you in that you would have to do quite a bit to bring stuff in personnel wise. Some people were making the comment on this, Brendan. I'll be interested if you think this too. And it's maybe a signal of where they're going to go this offseason, which is that instead of us thinking, okay, they finally learned their lesson to build this around Russell. Okay, then now they finally decided they're going to get the offensive line going. What we're hearing from this stuff is a desire and need to add to the personnel on that other side of the ball, i.e., you're not going to get as much on the offensive side of the ball as we had hoped and thought as we go into this offseason with this. Because there is, at the end of the day, there's a lot of money to spend, but there is only so much money to spend. You are missing a first-round pick. And if they decide, well, we need to go get a outside 3-4 linebacker, and then we're going to need to get a defensive end that can play strong side as 3-4, and you could start dipping into that little well of a budget that we had hoped to maybe go to other places at that point to make that work. But they could do it from a linebacker standpoint, right? You've got 2 middle linebackers right there with Jordan and Bobby. They could play the 3-4. You have 2 middle linebackers in the 3-4. You mentioned Taylor. So you're really at that point only really needing to, at least as starters go, get one more guy that can play stand up on the edge. But people have been wanting Chandler Jones, right, Brendan? People have been talking about those kind of guys is let's get that. Well, that would open the door to making that kind of signing then by going to that. And you at least have, we could talk about the down lineman, but at least from the backside of that front seven, you look moderately okay,
Yeah. That thought did occur to me as well, because I think one of the things that Desai negotiated for when he came in here was he would have some degree of personnel control. Maybe not control, but personnel influence, personnel, some ability to say, hey, I need more weapons in this arsenal.
Something beyond what we probably think has been the case before, right? Which is that the coach who's been in his similar position has been told what time of day it is with the personnel, right? And then you make this, you do your job within that. We'll handle this. Where you're right. Desai negotiated something in this, some kind of say within this personnel side of it. Frankly, I think too, because Brendan, this is understood about the league. The league understands how Seattle's struggled in their drafting process and how they've targeted personnel and how they put their teams together. And that maybe this is a little acknowledgement in that, like it's an acknowledgement in giving over the autonomy, supposedly the full control to Hurt and letting him be a true defensive coordinator.
Yeah. I'm definitely interested to see how that plays out. You can I'm doing my Dream Offseason series on my channel right now. I don't know if you've seen the videos yet, but the last couple days I've uploaded a couple of Dream Offseasons, and I was able to pretty easily clear $76 million in cap space. And one thing to remember is we have a lot of guys under contract right now who are not going to be on the 53-man. Guys like Lockie M. Williams, Aaron Donkor, Pierre-Olivier Lestage, they're not going to be on the active roster. Their contracts are fully non-guaranteed, so their money comes off. So when you include...
I highlight this, Brendan, because people don't understand this. So to really nail this down for people and what you mean by that, because it's a key point in understanding how much cap space they have.
Right. So if you take a look at our SPO-Track page right now, it lists every player we have under contract, every player on the books. You have a lot of guys on this team who I think we all know are not going to be there when the season starts. Lockie M. Williams is a great example of that. Pierre-Olivier Lestage. These guys are counting about $700,000 against the cap. Some of them count like $800,000 or $900,000. If those guys go to the practice squad, they only cost about $200,000 against the cap. And if they just get plain cut, they don't count anything because their contracts are fully non-guaranteed. So every time you get rid of one of those guys, you're freeing up an additional $700,000, $800,000.
Bingo.
Got to remember that.
And that's where when you go to the sport track, it could throw you off right now because you see, we only have this much cap space. But you got to keep in mind what the roster will look like with that top 53 that counts off the board versus what will really be when it's all said and done. It's a very key point in how you look at the cap to understand. We actually have more space than you might think if you just look at it blankly from that side of things.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you really try to squeeze every little bit of cap space you can get, it's not hard to get to 100 million. And I'm not saying we will. I'm not even necessarily saying we should. But if you get to like post June 1st and a bunch of teams cut some guys, post June 1st cuts, then you could get to 100 million in totality, because guys like Dunlap actually don't count hardly anything against the cap if you cut them after June 1st. It's like, I think like 900, you're saving over 5 million on a Dunlap cut. Then you can save 3 million if you cut Mayoa post June 1st. You can save 6 million if you cut Gabe Jackson post June 1st.
Mhm.
So there are so many ways to create cap space. And like when I made the video, I listed all the guys that I wanted to cut, and people were like, man, you're really trying to remake this team. And I'm like, well, we were pretty bad last year. I don't want to bring back the same team we had last year. So yeah, I'm trying to mix things up a little bit here.
Well, as we say, we're not playing in regular divisions here. We're in the NFC West. Our team just won the Super Bowl. Where our divisions churns out the team that goes to the Super Bowl quite often out of this conference. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. And we've got to operate less from the standpoint of like, well, it's like we're in the AFC North or AFC South, no, we're in the NFC West, and we're going to need to stack this team up. And everybody is going all in on this division. And if we're not, then we're going to fall short. And if we're going to fall short, then let's just rebuild. But if we don't want to do that, then let's go all in. I mean, that's as succinct as I can put why we arrive at going as aggressively as we both agree in wanting to see, because you're not going the other direction with it. So, it's a S or get off the pot type situation here. You want to be in with the big dogs? You want to run with the big dogs? Take the fangs out and bite. You want to go back and lay back in the den with the puppies? We can go do that too. But you decide you didn't want to do this. All right, let's go. We're with you. All in. Create, as you're talking about, Brendan, the cap space is there to create. They can do with it is what they will. Is there a little pain down the road? Maybe. But are the Rams worrying about that pain today? Are they worrying about any of those first or second or third round picks they're missing in this upcoming draft or being 15 million over the cap? Are they stressing that right now? I don't think so.
And quite often that future pain ends up not being as bad as you think, because the cap keeps going up, because sometimes these players don't fall off a cliff as fast as you expect. A lot of the times it's not as bad as you would think. Like when the Eagles traded Carson Wentz, they took on a massive cap hit this year or last year. A lot of people thought they were going to take 2021 off. They made the playoffs. So a lot of the time, that era of pain that comes after you go all in, it's not as bad as you think.
Right. It gets tremendously overstated and prevents, sometimes it allows teams to get away with, maybe building the roster up bigger than as build as they possibly could, and going, sure, well, we don't want to have that scary thing happen. And we get back into that. Don't make decisions based off fear. Make it from a standpoint of aggressiveness. And you're going to be in a lot better shape at the end of the day, or better chance of being in better shape, I guess. There are no guarantees, but.
Right. A couple of super chats here. Megan Gauk Roger, thank you for the $2. Greetings, boys. Still so excited about Desai. So am I. This guy, I don't like to play this game, but he does seem like he's on a future NFL head coach track. So there's a scenario here where he's the Seahawks head coach in 3 years, if this works out.
Yeah, when guys get on this kind of track, when they get on this projection state as far as coaches go, they get there sooner than later. Even inside that.
Or he gets hired by another team and we get 2 third round picks, right?
I know. God,
I mean,
I didn't know. Did you know about that rule when you first saw the trade? Or
no, I thought the team that hired them got extra draft picks, not the team they left.
It just seemed like somebody was messing with us when I saw that the Niners were getting 2 third-round picks for the thing, and I just went, oh my God, of course. That's why I say it's the NFC West, man. It's just like,
Paydirt Sports Cards, thank you for the $2. The Hurt interview makes me excited. He said a lot of the right things. Yeah.
He's speaking to the bleachers there with that whole interview. There's not one part of that interview that doesn't fall in line with what a huge part of the fan base has called for quite a long period of time. Not just the linemen going backwards, being aggressive. It's up to me. The thing he specifically said, it's up to me to best utilize Jamal Adams. And we weren't utilizing him in that fashion. I mean, everything he said with that, Brendan, was exactly what we've talked about and what I've said with it, where he's not supposed to be in cover 3. He's not supposed to be in cover 2. He's a downhill player. Put him in a position to succeed. Put him in the position to do what he did with the New York Jets, and you will get the most out of him again. And he said basically align with all of that right down the board with it, which at least from what he's talking about and what he's saying are all of the things we would want to hear in this situation from a new defensive coordinator.
Marcus Overly, this is not a super chat, but he did just donate to me on PayPal, which is great because you get around the YouTube taxes. And by the way, that's actually, it's significant, by the way. It really is. It's crazy how much YouTube takes away from these. But anyway, I want to address his comment here because he did donate. I really believe Jody Allen forced Pete to take different directions with coaching and drafting. I think she took his VP title away. What do you all think? I mean, that's something that could have happened and we would never hear about it because it's kind of embarrassing. And the timing did make me think, because it really felt like we weren't going to change anything. And then Pete and Jody had their meeting, and then suddenly Ken Norton got fired. It did make me think, I wonder if something happened in that meeting. But it's hard for me to believe Pete would be willing to stay here if he had his VP title taken away. I don't think he would be down with that.
Very, very hard to say on that one. I mean, I can see why they would be keeping it quiet. Part of me goes, well, her brother did do something similarly to Mike Holmgren at one time. And if she's looking to follow in the steps of what her brother did and make similar decisions, this would be along those realm of it. But because we have nothing that's been reported on of it, and only just Norton being fired alone would not be enough of an indication that the VP title has been taken away. Some kind of change is being pushed down the track here. Now, whether it really lands, Brendan, whether all this talk, all this big talk and wolf talking's going on this offseason about things we want to hear, really when the rubber meets the road, that's what happens. We'll see. We'll see. But at least as far as what they're saying, there seems to be an indication of things being shifting and changing in a direction that we haven't seen here in 4 or 5 years.
Right. And it's just one of those things we might never really know, because we've had a GM this whole time and we still have that same GM. Maybe he'll have more power come draft time, but it's really, really hard to know from our position. Charles Riley, thank you for the $5. The Killer Bees are back. Glad to catch you cats on stream. Thank you, Charles.
Appreciate it, Charles. Back. Good to see you, man.
Yeah, good to see you. Also from Charles Riley, thank you for the $5. The Rams aren't worried because they traded capital for Jalen Ramsey, Matt Stafford, and Von Miller. The Hawks got Jamal Adams. Yeah, I mean, they made trades at more obviously valuable positions, and that is really showing itself right now, because they got the best corner in the league, although he did not play well in the Super Bowl at all. They got a quarterback who was a significant upgrade over their current quarterback, and they got a pass rusher. Those might be, other than left tackle, the three most important positions in football.
Agreed. And I think the thing the Rams do that is different than from the Seattle Seahawks, you can even go back to Brandon Cooks, who they made a trade for, and how they did them. The thing that stands out to me and what they do is when they trade for a guy, they put him in a position to succeed. When they bring in Odell Beckham, they put him in the position to get the most out of him. Stafford this year definitely wasn't using kid gloves with him in his first year with this offensive coordinator. Von Miller was brought in to free up Aaron Donald, and Aaron Donald is there to free up Von Miller. One of those two guys is going to get single blocked on a given play, and so they can go in and hunt. And with Ramsey, it's interesting with that one is you've got a guy who's a zone-based corner in the Jaguars playing in our scheme with the Jaguars, hating life as that zone corner, wanting to go to a man-based scheme, does so with the Rams, loving life with the Rams because he gets to go where he gets to get the most out of his skill set, and the Rams are getting the most out of his skill set. So you look at that, and then you look at, okay, with Jamal Adams, what'd you do? Well, we traded the boat for him, and then we kept the boat in the harbor. That's essentially what you've done. And like, you want to trade for a guy there. I don't like the asset you gave up for him. It's a bad trade in retrospect. It doesn't look good, but at the very least, they can help the situation along by putting him in the proper positions to succeed, putting him in a position to do what he does best, which is attack, hunt, be a predator. That's what the man is, you know?
Right. I don't doubt that it's a bad trade. I think everybody knows at this point it is a bad trade. That doesn't mean that we can't still get some good things out of this guy while we have him, because we're going to have him for at least 2 more years, I think.
Agreed. Yeah, I don't think yes, I think you got to salvage this, right? It may not be the perfect all pro we got before. We get a Pro Bowl level strong safety out there still, if we put him in the right position to do so.
Megan, thank you for the $2 again. Pete still has his title on the updated Hawk site. Yeah, I what I'm suggesting is maybe they quietly take it away from him, but they don't say anything. They just start doing business differently behind closed doors. I'm not saying that that's likely. I'm saying that I don't know if they would want to publicly humiliate him by publicly stripping him of his title, and I don't know if he would be okay with that, even if they wanted to. So it's just a theory. I kind of doubt it's the case.
Yeah, it could be Megan with it like that. It's just background stuff. They're not trying to embarrass Pete. They're just doing it for it's truly being done for the change that they want to see in place so that you get better, more successful results on the football field. Not because, for instance, they want a PR win back with the fan base by saying, "Oh, look, we took away one of Pete's titles. You know, now aren't you guys happy? Aren't you seeing the change we're implementing?" They're not trying to operate from that standpoint. It's purely from a standpoint. We think this is where this is maybe going a little wrong with you right now, Pete. We're going to maybe pull it. So we don't know, but it's a possibility. Certainly, it's a possibility it could have happened.
Right. Right. Okay. So that's the Sean Desai stuff. I think we're all pretty encouraged about that. There was one other big move, and there were like 6 other small moves that may not carry any real significance. But there's one thing that happened that I think is really worth going into. Excuse me. So Mike Solari got fired a few days ago, and Andy Dickerson, who was brought in with Shane Waldron from the Rams last year, got promoted to offensive line coach. So now you have a former Rams coach as your offensive coordinator, and he is now paired up with a former Rams coach at offensive line coach. And it seems very likely that that Solari got pushed out because his offensive lines were more known for road graders, big guys, big strong guys who just run people over, more run blocking guys who just win hat on a hat. And we decided we were going to go in a different direction. So just talking about that move, the move to go from Solari to Dickerson, what are your thoughts?
It's tough to see Solari go from the standpoint of I think he's a quality offensive line coach. Second run here in Seattle. He was with the Holmgren era run. Great guy in that respect. He came here, I think, with a cupboard that was pretty bare. Cable, I think, did a pretty good job with some of his, let's get this guy, let's get that guy, and getting a lot of bad offensive linemen in here when Solari first came in outside of, let's say, Dwayne Brown. And he had to kind of come in here and reclamate this thing just a little bit, and was still not given a whole lot of assets, by the way, Brendan. You know, he was never given a big free agent contract signing. The highest pick he got throughout his time here was third rounder Damian Lewis, who had a marvelous first season the first year, and then who they just moved out the gate as soon as he had the marvelous season. So he wasn't given a whole lot there. But with that said, I understand the move, and it makes a lot of sense. You do need the more mobile offensive lineman. That's not Solari's pedigree. You're going to go to more zone-based principles. Solari's got some of that in his bag, but it's not really where the full complement of what he does is come from and how he's taught it. And so you're going to want to start to teach these techniques, which are a little outside of the way Solari does it. And part of that's probably going to be also embracing a little bit of the smaller, more mobile offensive lineman. And I think that's, again, an encouraging sign, because if you're going to bring in Waldron, you're going to bring in the Rams offense. Like I say about this McVay team, if we're going to go over there and grab it, if we're going to take their offense, we're going to take their defense. Don't treat it like a buffet. Don't be like, I want some bacon and I want a little bread, a little cheese. You got to take the whole thing. So if you're going to take the offensive playbook over, you're going to need the mobile offensive lineman. You're going to need to teach that technique that they teach, the reach blocks, the getting the guys out in space at the second level, the pulling across the formation, all of these things that they do in LA and do well. You're going to need the linemen that can do it, but you're going to need the guys that can teach them the proper techniques and how to do it, which Dickerson can, probably a little bit better than Solari.
Right. And the thing that I really liked about the Solari move, because I didn't dislike Solari either, he was pretty good. We had a lot of players who immediately looked better when Solari showed up. Dwayne Brown started playing better. Even Affetti, nobody wants to give him the credit for it, but he did play better under Solari than he did with Cable. But the thing that I really like about this is that it also implies we're going to have to turn over the offensive line personnel a little bit. Because you can't switch up your offensive line coach and then say, okay, we're going to give you all the same guys and you're going to have to figure this out. That doesn't really make any sense. So I think the odds of re-signing a guy like Dwayne Brown go down significantly, because Dwayne Brown's 37 years old. He's already a little slow. He's only going to get slower. That's not really a guy who I look at and go, he's a good fit for what we're trying to build here on offense with Waldron. Yeah. So I like that. I'll like it a lot less if we bring back a guy like a Dwayne Brown, because it'll tell me that we're, again, putting players in weird positions where they're not allowed to utilize their strengths the best. So that part of it I like. And I just like how much sense it makes. Just logically in your head, it's like, okay, we're changing the way we're doing things on offense from a play calling and scheme perspective. So now we're getting an offensive line coach that matches that. And hopefully now we follow it up by bringing in personnel that can match that.
Right. And that's what you want to see, is congruence with your way your front office goes to your scouts, who go to your coaches, who go down, that everybody is in line with understanding what we're trying to accomplish. Not, well, I like to do it this way. Well, this is the way I want to call the game. That's not going to work. So it makes tons of sense there. As I've said, my theme for this offseason is learn your lessons. You brought in Solari, cupboard bare, he improved upon it, but he couldn't really it was like a sculptor that didn't have enough clay. You know what I mean? He couldn't quite get it to fully to where he needed to get. So now when you bring in another guy, give him what he needs, give him the clay, give him the tools, let him mold this thing in the proper way to see if you can get the most out of it. On top of this is the offense you've brought in, and it's not going to work. Everybody goes, I'm sure you've heard so many lamentations about the screen game. Why can't we run a screen game? What's the screen? We got big fat linemen that can't run 10 yards to get to a linebacker off ball. That's the problem. You need about 2 or 3 of those guys to be able to run that decently. So you're going to need to bring them in. Hopefully they do. Brendan, but this is at least a signal. If we're looking for small signals, little bits of smoke to the hopeful fire we see in this respect, this gives you it, because it tells you they're at least starting to align that. Whereas last year you still had Solari in here, and as much as we liked him, went, well, how's he going to adapt this Waldron scheme, and how does that go with this one? Okay, it makes more sense. It's a lot like Brendan elevating Hurt and bringing in Desai. Desai's coming in to bring in the Vic Fangio stuff and to help them. It's again, they want to expand into this. Hurt talked about being more attacking based, right? Carroll's talked about being more attacking based. You got to bring in the brain power to get it done. You can't just have your guys trying to do, well, now this is the new thing you do in the league now, gentlemen. See, it's the new thing you do. So just teach them how to do that now. No, you need a specialist who can specialize in how to train it.
Right. Absolutely. And I think that's the main thing. I don't know too much about Dickerson other than the fact that he was working with the Rams before last year, but theoretically it makes sense to me. And that's going to kind of segue into the next thing I want to spend some time here. But first, another super chat from Charles Raleigh. Desai looks like an actor on Law and Order. I think he should be paired with Benjamin Bratt to solve NYC crimes. Yeah, I can kind of see that. He does look very photogenic.
Was a Yale guy or something? Came from, I think, an Ivy League school. He's got he's got a smart guy. This is definitely a big brain dude. So he can solve some crimes. I wouldn't put it past him.
Megan, thank you for the $2. Do you think these changes are a rebuild or? And this kind of segues into the next point I wanted to talk about nicely. So I'm going to kind of walk through some stuff here, and I'm going to ask you how you feel about it, Brandon.
All right.
So I've been thinking about the moves that this team has just made in their coaching staff and how it relates to last year, because last year you and me both were pretty convinced that 2021 needed to be kind of an all-in year for us. Yes. Because we had just flamed out in 2020. There was a lot of Russell Wilson trade talk. We both felt like that we needed to go all out and say, we're going to try to win the Super Bowl in 2021. And then the team did some things that made us think that they were going to do that, but ultimately they didn't.
Right.
On the one hand, they used void years. On the other hand, they left $13 million unspent. On the one hand, they brought in a new offensive coordinator. On the other hand, they didn't really do anything else besides bringing in the new offensive coordinator. It was mostly the same personnel, mostly the same coaches around that offensive coordinator. And then you look at 2021, where now there seems to be acknowledgement on the part of Pete Carroll that we were having an offensive line and an offense that were not congruent with each other. He said something like, me and Solari agree that him moving on is best for this offense's evolution. So kind of acknowledging that, yeah, we brought in the Waldron offense, but we were linking it up with a non-Waldron offensive line coach and a non-Waldron offensive line in general.
Right.
But we wanted to kind of slowly acclimate it, which is why you brought in Dickerson as kind of the heir apparent. And now he has become that heir. He has actually inherited that.
Right.
And then on defense, it seemed like we used 2021 as sort of a transition year from the cover 3 to the Fangio defense, where as the year went on, you were incorporating more and more Fangio stuff, more cover 2 stuff. And over the course of the year, you saw the defense go from one thing to another thing. So I kind of feel like maybe the team was not looking at 2021 as the all-in year. Maybe they were looking at it like a transition year where, okay, we're going to try to make the playoffs, but we're not going to go head-to-head with the Rams because they're all in. We're not even really going to go head-to-head with the Cardinals because they're pretty much all in too. We're going to try to be good enough to make the playoffs, And honestly, we probably would have if Wilson didn't get hurt. I can admit that. And 2022 is the year. So what I was thinking about lately is, did the Seahawks actually kind of have a plan? Because one thing you and me talked about a lot last year was it doesn't seem like we have a plan. Now, I'm not saying it's a good plan, because you've got a franchise quarterback at 32 years old. You don't really want to take the year off and just say, we'll just let things play out slowly while you've got this 32-year-old franchise quarterback. But even if it's not a good plan, it's still a plan. So I don't know. Do you kind of feel like maybe that was the plan? Just 2021 is a chill year, and then 2022 is the year we go for it?
I mean, a little bit, potentially. I think certainly the fact that Russell, with the way the situation played out last year, probably put them in a little bit less of an aggressive mode of things, of sacrificing future, because they were like, well, hold on, are we just going to be a year from now with no Russell Wilson here? Because he's just going to then force the trade. And then we've now basically put ourselves cap-wise in a perilous situation for the next couple of years without our Hall of Fame quarterback here. I think in that way I could have driven it in that direction. But I also go back to, the stance that they took this offseason with the contracts they give out was the same stance they took the previous offseason when they had $50 million to spend, when they had about the same amount of money that they had to spend this upcoming offseason. And the 1 and 2 year deals, the bargain basement shopping in free agency, the lack of willingness to attack in the first wave of free agency or pay what is market price for good players was there then too. And so I'm more, I guess, to go the long way around on this, Brendan, I more chalk it up to a little bit of like, everybody's kind of fat and happy, like they talk and squawk about the competitive stuff. But I think the last couple of years, some people have been sitting back just kind of like, yeah, we win every year. We've been here 10 years. We always get to the playoffs. I think that there was a little bit of a sense of like satisfaction with that. Like everything's fine with it. And one of these years we'll break through. One of these years we'll get into the Super Bowl. It's real competitive. It's hard to get in there, but one of these years there'll be an injury thing and things will break our way, and then the ball will bounce this direction and everything will be good. But I think it was more that and less of a mentality of, we got to be aggressive. This is hard. We got teams in this division that are going at it. And I more chalk it up to that. But it could be as easily what you're saying too. I can't say for sure one way or another either. So.
Yeah. It's just something I've been playing with mentally lately. Like, was this part of the plan? Did they decide that 2021 is not going to be the year? We've got a rookie offensive coordinator who's never called plays before, who just got here. We've got a bunch of personnel from the old offensive coordinator. Maybe they just kind of went, you know what? If we go all out this year, it's not going to end well. There are teams in this division that are more poised to go all in successfully than we are. And we have now seen that one team went all in with the ultimate success in this division. But I've been very negative about this coaching staff in general over the last several years, really. So when I saw these moves being made, it did make me think, was it kind of part of the plan to just say that 2021 is going to be a little bit of a punt year where, yeah, you want to make the playoffs, but we're not trying to go toe to toe with teams like the Bucks and the Rams and maybe even the Packers. We're just going to try to make the playoffs.
I'll say this.
Just something occurred to me.
They made that choice at some point last year, Brendan, before the trade deadline. So we may differ on this as whether or not it has truly happened. It did happen at some point. It's just where we're different on where, because I guarantee you that money they had saved in the kitty, the $11 million on the cap that they had sitting there, say nothing of Russell's base to bonus conversion that could have happened at any point. There was an intention there at some point to use that. You negotiated the base to bonus in Russell's contract in 2018. So 2 years ago, you had an intention. We're going to probably call upon this at some point. Otherwise, Brendan, you don't negotiate it into the contract, right? So there was intention there. You had the $11 million on the books created by creating those voidable years on the contracts that you signed. So that indicates there was an intention to use that cap this year. Something happened. Was it that they looked at the lay of the land and they went, this is too far uphill for us to go? This 11 million is a drop in the bucket for what we need to do with this team? Yeah, probably something like that occurred. They made a choice at some point to say, we're not all in this year. They did. They made that conscious point. I don't know if it would have come in the offseason, but again, it could have, Brendan, because you could be right on this as well, because the Russell Wilson situation is enough alone to bring everything to a standstill. the future of your quarterback position, a quarterback legend here, potentially having to make that big trade. That puts you in a situation, okay, where are we post-trade if we have to move Russell in a year from now? Where are we at from an asset standpoint? Where are we at from a cap situation? I mean, it makes everything on the table as far as you have to have all your ducks in a row and be prepared for that now to come down the track so you're not hit completely sideways.
Yeah, my thing is that even when we used the void years, we weren't using those void years to get superstars. We were using them to get like Gerald Everett, who's good. I like Gerald Everett. I'm not saying anything bad about Everett, but he's not Gronkowski. He's not a all-pro tight end. He's not. So even then, it seemed like they were kind of being passive. And again, I liked most of what we did last offseason. I liked bringing back Dunlap. I liked getting rid of Reed and then bringing in Kerry Hyder. I thought all these things we did, they made sense, but we were definitely missing the home run swing. And maybe we didn't take that home run swing because we just decided this wasn't the time. We'll know more when free agency starts, because if we don't take some home run swings this free agency period, then maybe we're just, at that point, maybe you just have to say they're not capable of it.
Right. Yes, that they're not capable. What we have to say at that point, Brendan, is that the level of aggression we're asking for to be competitive in this tough NFC West, they're not willing to get to that standpoint of things. And they're going to be relying on injury luck, like I said, ball bouncing in a direction, things outside of your control that have more to do with the, gods of football or whatever you want to call it, having that play. And that's not a place that I tend to want to land in from a standpoint of hoping on luck and a wing and a prayer. I'd rather try to do as much as I can do from what we control. Like you said at the top of this show, the amount of cap you can feasibly create if you are aggressive, if you are all in, if you truly want to push this year, not to just try to eke your way into the playoffs, but get yourself up into conference championship, get yourself up into, dare I say it, even of Super Bowl contention. But it does, to me, in my opinion, it takes that. It takes that level of aggression. And if you're going to fall short of it, you're going to fall right back into the same mold you've been. You'll maybe be a consistent winner again next year, back to that consistent winning state, 10-7, out after the first round of the playoff. What's that worth at that point?
Yeah. I feel that same way. And we've seen it from this team. This team, they're not like some of these other teams that can go on the road and win a bunch of playoff games in a row and make the Super Bowl that way. The 3 times we've made the Super Bowl, we were the number 1 seed. Most of our playoff wins have come at home. How many road playoff wins have the Seahawks had since I was born? I think I can count them on one hand. We won in Washington, Russell's rookie year.
Right.
We won in Minnesota, the Blair Walsh game, and then we won in Philly against their practice squad. So that's it.
Right. And in the Philly game, you had Wentz go out way early in that game. So you're to the Josh McCown with his weird hamstring trying to rock through. And then in the game against the Vikings, it took you needing a kicker to miss a 22-yard field goal for you to go and win that game. So like, you're right. Going in the playoffs on the road, it's really hard to win. And let's face it, we've got a really big home field advantage at home with the way the elements play in the winter, especially if we have a team that can run the ball, play good defense. Because if you have a team like the Saints with Breeze in his prime coming into our stadium and the winds are whipping and the rains are raining, they can't execute their pass-heavy offense. And they're not a good enough running team to go. And you've got then yourself a nice, easy, somewhat easy playoff win versus what it could have been if you're playing in more equivalent conditions, neutral conditions, I guess is the word I'm looking for. So that's what you should be aspiring to, in my opinion, is the number 1 seed. It's hard to get, I know. Winning on the road in the playoffs has been easier of recent for whatever reason. I don't know why the home field advantage is kind of going away a bit in the NFL, but to me, it's still worth a lot here in this city. And it should be what you push for. And look, Brendan, the NFC could be yours next year. It could be yours for the taking. Rams have got to suffer. They've got to bleed their blood this offseason. 49ers are still going to be tough. Kyler Murray's been what is going on there.
Yeah, we're going to have to talk about that a little later.
Oh yeah, we got to speak a little bit about Kyler. But Aaron Rodgers' situation is a big question mark still, I believe, in Green Bay right now. Tom's now retired. NFC East is nothing. So this is a conference for the taking right now. If you are aggressive, this is one you can go get. It ain't like we're going through, again, the murderer's row that we normally have to go through here. No more Drew Breeses here. I mean, if they want to go, they can go. It is there.
Charles Raleigh, thank you for the $5. Killer Bees, let's get Cordarrelle Patterson and go for the gold. I was actually looking at that earlier. Spotrac thinks Cordarrelle's going to get some serious money this offseason. I was pretty surprised by that. He's about to turn, I think, 32. I didn't think he was going to get paid, but Spotrac thinks he will.
What are they
For
saying
whatever
he's
that's
going to
worth.
get?
I'm going to pull it up here real quick, but that kind of put me off because even though I do want to obviously work on our running back position this offseason, it's just not an area I feel like there's any need to spend significant money on. I think you can get good players for relatively cheap. Okay, Cordarrelle Patterson, about to turn 31, by the way. They think he's going to get 9.1 million a year, so 2 years, 18.3, which seems high, but I don't know how high it is. Like, if you bring that down to like 5 million a year, then I'm interested. But at 9 million, no.
You're on the right track with that. That's the true value there. He's a 2-year, $10 million player right now. You can't really run him. You can run him a little as running back, but he's really the fly sweep guy, bubble screen guy. I like him as that backup to Eskridge in that realm. So you have a little redundancy at the position, because I feel like when Eskridge went down this year, you had Freddie Swain and Penny Hart trying to run a lot of the Eskridge stuff in this Rams offense were brought on, and they just couldn't really do it. So having a backup guy to do it at a lesser price, I'm okay with, but I mean, it's going to have to be heavily reduced off what Spotrac's telling you on that. That's way too rich for my blood.
Yeah.
Way too rich.
Yeah. If somebody offers him that, then I certainly can't match it. I'll say that much.
Can't come close. As Brendan said, I mean, you're going to have to half that to even start having conversations with me on that kind of value.
Right. Okay. So I think that's pretty good on the coaching staff stuff. I'm encouraged by this stuff. After that Bears game at the end of the season, when Carroll came out in his press conference and said, there's no doubt in my mind that we have everything we need in here to win. We have the right philosophy. I know how to win. I really got down because I thought when he said that, he meant it. But these moves kind of say that maybe he doesn't totally feel that way, because he's bringing in guys with a different philosophy and he seems more open to doing things differently. And if this team is going to win with Carroll, because I've expressed in the past a belief that we're not going to be able to achieve the ultimate goal with Carroll anymore, this is how you do it. You give him less to do. You give him less control over the proceedings.
Yeah, and again, it's been I've seen talk of this at times where people, I think, again, get this misunderstood as to what we mean by when we look at Carroll in retrospect and say we don't know if he can do it. People go, because you look at him because he's old. Oh yeah, because you're saying he's old and he's old and he can't do it anymore. It's the lazy argument of things, right, Brendan? No, it has nothing to do with his age. Nothing to do with his age. It's the way he's been going about his business recently, which has been, I make a mistake. It was luck. I'll do it the same way again next time, and I'm sure it'll succeed. Do it again, breaks, doesn't work. Well, this time, something just didn't quite go my way. But I have, the base philosophy is solid, still strong base philosophy. Third time, fails, broken. It's that we keep seeing the same mistake and no willingness to wrap their arms around the mistake. You mentioned the press conference at the end of the year where he's doing no wrapping of arms around any mistakes. Everything's great. Everything's wonderful. Everything's good. We're just going to keep this as is. Everything stays together. All good, positive, glass half full. That's not, there's no indication to guys like me and Brendan that try to follow this and analyze this to give us at that point, no fruit for us to bite to say, oh, here, he's finally learned his lesson. We're going in a different direction now. They're finally learning. Any point in time, Carroll can fix this stuff. Everything is fixable. There is no unfixable situation. There's no coach who's too old not to be able to find a way to get over what is ailing him. But it's that willingness to get around your own ego, your own pride, your own, this is how we do it, this is how I've always done it type of mentality, which Carroll's shown no willingness to do as of recent. These are moves, though, to your point on this, Brendan, that are indicative of that. He's starting to show you now some signs of Vic Fangio's defense, and talking about 3-4 looks. There would have never been a day I would have thought with Coach Carroll, the recent 10-year edition I've gotten of him, that would have led me to believe he would be anywhere close to embracing that stuff from a conceptual basis.
Yeah, I think that sums it up pretty well. So let's turn the page a little bit, because there were a couple other things that happened. Like we promoted our running back coach to run game coordinator, but who knows what that'll mean, if anything. It might not really mean much of anything. A lot of titles got moved around. Somebody noted that only 7 people on our coaching staff maintained their same title from last year to this year, and obviously one of them was Carroll. I think Larry Izzo was one of them. The tight ends coach was one of them. A lot of guys got moved around. We'll see what it ends up
The son got moved too, didn't
Me.
he?
Yeah, I think he became a quality control offensive guy.
Yeah.
And Nate Carroll, he was the wide receiver coach before, I think. So
Yeah.
honestly, you could say he's one of the guys on this coaching staff who's been doing his job because our receivers have generally been pretty good.
I mean, I'm out on Swain a little bit. I'm down on that. But I mean, you're doing good with the frontline guys. I think DK's
Yeah.
continued to develop good. Lockett's got his best year of his career last year. Even with the extra game, still, I think the best year of his career. Certainly didn't fall off like he has in recent years, where he seemed to have grown down, worn down. Sorry.
But even like David Moore, he went from nothing to a guy who was a decent number 3 for a couple years.
Yeah.
That's not bad.
No, Moore
So
was good.
there's a guy who's generally done his job better than most coaches on this staff. Y2KHA, thank you for the $5. I've been listening and may have missed it. Did you talk any of the 3-4-4-3 multiple defensive schemes? Yes, we did. I like the concept. I don't love it if we don't get the right personnel for it. That's basically summing it up for me.
I will say too that the thing that helps a little bit with this and making this kind of transition with Carroll in regards to this is, of course, he's talked about running 3-4 principles out of a 4-3 defense, which essentially in the way Carroll's meaning that is that his defensive lineman 2 gap rather than the normal 1 gapping, you'd have him doing a 4-3 defense. And the 2 gapping is what you have 3-4 down linemen do, which is essentially they're controlling space, right? Controlling blockers, controlling space, letting the linebackers run free and go make plays. So while Brendan's also right, you're going to have to make some, especially on those down linemen, you might have to make some changes. You do have guys, at least if you do force them into that role a little bit, Puna, you're going to play a little defensive end in a 3-4 now. Well, he's done a lot of 2 gapping here. So he'll understand the responsibilities of that scheme as he slides into it from that standpoint. Is he at that point a fit as a defensive end there? And that's probably not, but you could at least maybe make some of that work to a degree because they have trained it.
A lot of people, myself included, suspect that we may end up bringing in Akeem Hicks because he played under Desai in Chicago. And usually when you bring over a significant coach, they like to try to bring over a couple of their players. A lot of people think that guy will be Akeem Hicks. Do you think he could play tackle in a 4-3 and end in a 3-4? Or do you think that might not be such a great fit?
I think he's going to lack explosion at this point. I mean, he's going to be just trying to bull rush everybody off the edge if you run him in there. At the 3 tech, if you try to put him in there, I don't know how effective he can be at that. I haven't seen it on tape really from him. Really, when I watch the Bears, it's all been 3-4 with him. Basically having that to where he knows he's got 2 blockers and then just sort of beasting past the 2 blockers. That's basically what he's kind of done from why he's been as effective as he has, in my opinion, is he's just able to really take advantage at times. That natural double team comes and he can still give you some, some pressure, collapse the pocket a little bit, even against that, where, some guys, when they get the double teams, they're neutralized right at the point of attack. They're not going anywhere. They might hold up, right? They might be the wall and stand there. He can actually kind of walk it back / split it from time to time. He might be able to do some of it, but again, a player that's like I've told you, my new term for this is the withering player, right? The guy that 3 years ago was a monster. The last 3 years, you've had withering production on the football field as far as their grade, as far as their base statistics are concerned, as far as what the eye test will say, injuries popping up in addition. Those things all start to come together and you go, well, how much is really left there in the tank on this guy? Or are we caught up on yesteryear and what he was 3 years ago? Because football moves fast, and guys that were in their prime a couple years ago can quickly fall out of it very quickly and be really, Brendan, 70% of the player that they were just 3 years ago.
All right. I'm keeping an eye on the price tag with him because Spotrac had 2 years, 12 million. If you could get him in that 5 to 6 million a year range, heavily backloaded maybe with low guarantees, so you can cut him if the first year doesn't work out, then maybe you can bring him in and also go get the Grady Jarrett thing that we've been talking about, because he's almost certainly not going to be a Falcon this year. So then then you've actually got kind of a backup plan to the backup plan.
But if it was to be a situation where Seattle had to make an either or, right, and you end up coming away just to Akeem Hicks, and they go, well, we couldn't go after Geno because we kind of put some of that money already to Akeem this year, which I agree with you. I'm okay with Akeem as long as you got that second year, where if he doesn't prove in that first year and the withering has continued, bye-bye. I can go now with a small amount of cap hit. But if I've got to bring them on to cost Geno, rather than them doing what, again, we've talked about in this stream here, which is you didn't go hard enough for the quality. You went, well, we can just we can go get Akeem Hicks right now in free agency. Doesn't cost a draft pick. Don't have to put him on a new real monster contract. We can get out from under it in a year. Well, that's what you've been doing, is getting into a lot of these low-end contracts that you can get out after a year, so you can keep that flexibility, but you're not putting together the quality of team within that. And one could say that at the end of the day, to put the quality of team together, you're going to have to go get the grade A talent. You're going to have to spend the money to do it. And that's going to take more than the 1 or 2 year commitment that they have resided in the last couple of years.
Yeah, that's why I'm hoping that you could, and I do think there's a scenario where you could financially make it work. You get both. You get Grady Jarrett and Akeem Hicks, and then you've got Jarrett, Hicks, and Poona Ford as your tackles. Forget Brian Monet, forget Al Woods. Let's be a little more aggressive here. Let's try to get some guys who can actually push the pocket a little bit. Let's not just get these big trash cans full of dirt all the time.
I'm with it. A bunch of one techs that can do a little bit of three teching. That doesn't work for me anymore either. Let's get some guys that can play the position right and what is that's true to their form and what they are. So I'd love it, man. If you bring those two guys in as your defensive line and maybe find a somewhat cheap rotational edge rusher you can throw into the mix in addition to them, that'd be a pretty solid crew.
Pay Dirt Sports Cards, thank you for the $5. If Pete wants to use a mix of 4-3 and a 3-4, why don't they go hard at getting Von Miller? That is on the table. He is somebody who's getting older, but he played really well last year for the Rams after they got him, I think.
Yeah.
He was constantly putting up numbers. I was impressed. And I was a guy who kind of felt like, is this guy going to have anything left? It looks like he does. So I'm not opposed to it, but there are some red flags there with his age.
Yeah, I mean, it's Von Miller and Chandler Jones both become potential targets, and a lot of Seahawks fans are calling for these guys, and I've been sort of pulling the e-brake on people mentioning in my chat, because I go, look, I get it, they're great players, but unless we're going to change to a 3-4, you don't want to bring them in. You don't want to ask Von Miller for the first time in his career, 10 years into this league, to put his hand in the dirt for really the first time consistently. Same thing is true of Chandler Jones. You're going to then, not only are you then paying for past performance, and you got an older player a lot more high likely to be injured, you're doing that same thing you've been doing recently, which is trying to jam players into your scheme rather than getting the most out of what they do best naturally. Oh, sorry, you cut out mic-wise.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Is that better?
You're good. We got you.
Okay. Yeah. I hear a lot of Chandler Jones talk when it comes to Seahawks stuff, and there's just a lot of warning signs there. But if you do want to start doing more of a 3-4, and to be clear, I don't dread the 3-4 at all, because I think it'll help Jamal. I'm just wondering about some of the guys on this team. Can they do that? Can Jordan Brooks be an inside linebacker in a 3-4? I think. Can Darrell Taylor be an outside linebacker? Yes. Can Carlos Dunlap do it? Not so much. Can Kerry Hyder do it? I think so. Can Alton Robinson do it? I don't think so. Like you've got a lot of stuff you got to sort through there.
I think Hyder would be a pretty good 3-4 defensive end, because he's got that body size you like out there as a 3-4 end.
Mystic, thank you for the $4.99. Do you think Jay Curhan will be fast enough to run an offense with successful screens? He's a little quicker than you would think based on his size. I will say that. I'm not saying he's quick, but he is a right tackle, and those guys tend to be a little slower anyway. He's not as slow as his combine stats would lead you to believe. That's how I'm going to put it.
And the Rams offense, though they have favored mobile linemen, they have shown a willingness to go a little bit bigger and, let's say, maybe a little slower on the tackles. Look at Whitworth, for instance. At 6'8", he's not fleet of foot by any stretch of the imagination. He's long and he's big. Curran, there's no slicing any other way but this. To Brendan's point, he's got good play speed football-wise. One of those guys, again, you put him on a track, you time him with cones, it ain't going to look good. You put him on the football field and you blow the whistle and you let him go, and he looks fast enough. But the reason he went undrafted was because from an athletic profile, he tested horribly. So, is he going to get any quicker and faster? Maybe it's just a bad testing day. Maybe it's just he was sick. Maybe he had something going on. But I think he is a little bit limited in his athletic core. But again, the scheme's more to the guards and centers being quick, pulling, getting out in space, hitting their reach blocks. That's more of what you're going to need from the inside on that. Sub 300 pounders essentially is a lot of what the Rams scheme has for their offensive line inside. First, we tend to have 330, 340, Brendan, even on up above that at times.
I hear Joey Hunt's music. Joey Hunt's music just started playing. You can't say that. You have to qualify it a little bit. You start talking about sub 300 offensive linemen.
I forgot about the true outlier, the true great mobile lineman of our time. Just biding his time behind Ryan Nelson in Indianapolis, by the way. Just biding his time for his
Is he still in the NFL?
He's backing up Kelly with the Colts.
Wow. Okay, I did not see that one.
We almost had him starting in week 1 last year against us. This close.
Yeah.
Him starting.
Really? Okay, that's kind of funny. But I think Curhan just might be a guy who's faster when he's actually in a game. There have been some players in NFL history who sucked in practice, and then the game starts, the lights come on, and they're better. I remember Jeff Garcia was a guy like that. He was awful in practice. Yeah. And then the game started, and this guy can play. Tim Tebow was kind of like that too, except he kind of sucked in the games too, but he got it. He on some level got it done. But I think Curhan might just be a guy like that, where his speed on a track wearing a tracksuit is different than his speed wearing pads in an actual game.
Yeah, I mean, what Jerry Rice run like a 4.7 240 or something, which even in the 80s was, I mean, pedestrian slow. That was molasses. So yeah, it's possible he can maybe overcome it. But I do think you got to get him some competition out there. And if Waldron and Dickerson are telling you, Coach, we need a little bit more of a mobile right tackle out there, I think you need to be listening to them.
Right. Okay, so that's about all we have for the coaching staff. I think we went like a good hour on that. A lot of interesting stuff there, but let's take an initial look at the draft before we part ways today. Mm-hmm. We're I think 10 weeks away from the draft, if I'm counting right. So we've got a ton of time, but I know you've started to look at some stuff, and I have a little bit too. So in a general sense, where are the strengths and weaknesses of this draft, you think?
Well, I think it's important to do this too, Brendan, because this informs us on free agency. We don't want to look at the players quite yet because both me and Brendan are still really diving into the players. But when you can get a basic feel on a first kind of once over this draft, looking at some of the players, looking at what we're reading online, looking at what you're seeing about the talent in this draft, where the strengths are, where the weaknesses are, because then that informs you of free agency. And I'll kind of draw this to a point exactly here in a second. But I look at right now the 4 positional groups that stand out to me. And I give Schneider some credit on this because some of the holes of this team, frankly, Brendan, if we can address them in free agency, will be there for the draft. So standing out, you got a lot of tackles in this draft, both left tackles and right tackles, some really good, interesting prospects from that standpoint. The safety market, free safeties, there's some very interesting free safeties out there, some rangy guys out there. There's even an Earl Thomas in this draft, in my opinion, an Earl Thomas-like player, obviously probably off the board by when we select defensive tackle, and Will linebacker is actually not bad this year. Will linebackers, I've found a couple of guys that are really interesting players. Again, don't know if they're going to last or not. It's usually not a highly drafted position, but those are kind of the 4 that stack at the top for me. Decent is guard and center. Those are my 2 decents. Now, lacking is the interesting part for me on this, Brendan. Wide receiver, tight end, cornerback, and running back. That is where, now these aren't, it's not that they're awful, not that there isn't prospects you can find from these positional groupings. But what stands out to me as I look at this, and again, we're looking with this eye, what they're going to do defensively, are they going to start putting more assets to the defense? Well, this is going to get very mighty enticing for one Coach Carroll. Because as I said, of those 4 group at the top, cornerback, tackle, safety, defensive tackle, Will, strong, weak, wide receiver, tight end, quarterback, running back. All offense in the weakness column, right? Not a lot of top end receivers, running backs kind of meh, quarterbacks 2 through 4 is good, but that's it. And tight end, people might say tight end's decent on that. You could talk me into saying it should go in the decent category, but the defense seems that to me, the strength of the draft kind of lies right now. And frankly, the offensive side is a little bit, again, guard center good, but boy, if we're talking about wide receiver, tight end, quarterback, or running back, man, there's some good guys there, but nobody that gets me blown away.
Well, the tight end the tight end thing is offset significantly, I think, by how good this free agency class is. Yeah, we've talked about it before, but there are so many tight ends in free agency. I guess it just kind of makes sense that there wouldn't be a whole lot of tight ends in the draft. So that's actually lines up pretty well. I think that makes sense to me. I really like the fact that there are some good defensive tackles because if we don't end up with somebody like Akeem Hicks or Grady Jarrett, then there are not a lot of great options behind him. Like we're not going to get the Bengals guy Ogunjobi. There's no way he's going to be available. The Bengals are going to keep him. I don't think. And after that, you're down to guys like Quentin Jefferson, who would be okay.
Yeah.
So it would not shock me if we ended up using our top. What is it? 40, 41, 42, number 42 overall, something like that, on a defensive tackle. So I really like that. But I know you said corner in this draft looks kind of weak.
Good. No, good. That's straight.
Oh, you said corner looks good. Okay.
Right.
So
the thing that stands out to me, I've looked at about the top, I think 12 guys. And if I was to give you basic on that, of those 12 guys, 10 are rock and zone cut corner. Or they're zone corners, and they're basically running a lot of the same stuff that our scheme runs with the bail technique and the cover 3 stuff at times. So they would be perfect. And they've got the size, Brendan. So that's the other aspect. Not just 5'10" guys with little T-Rex arms, but I'm talking 6'1", 6'2", zone experience, know exactly what the responsibility. Hell, UW's churn out 2 of them in this draft. McDuffie and Gordon are both right there in the Seattle mold as far as what they would look for in size and what those players can do. I don't know if either of them is going to be available when Seattle goes and picks, and certainly Seattle doesn't like to take corners that high. But if you're talking about taking a corner into that 4th or 5th round, because of the level of depth of talent of so many zone guys, and remember, there's half the teams in the league run a lot of man. So there's half the teams that will just take those zone guys right off the board. That means those zone guys will then drift into that draft, into that 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th round range, where now you can get those guys that are actually high quality guys you're getting, but you're getting them later in the draft at that point.
Yeah, although Clint Hurt did mention in his interview that we would be a little less zony this year, which is going to kind of complicate things a little bit. I don't know how that's going to go over, especially if you bring back guys like DJ Reed and Sidney Jones, who are zone corners.
Right.
But yeah, that kind of hearing that makes me want to bring back DJ Reed less, because DJ Reed's probably going to be at least $9 million a year, probably more. If you're telling me you can go get some really good, cheap zone corners in the draft in like rounds 4 and 5, that makes me think even less of bringing back DJ Reed, honestly.
I agree with you. I mean, it does inform me in that way, doesn't it? I mean, it's especially knowing the track record of the past of this team doing fairly decently with guys, go 3rd round on, from Shaquille Griffin, Byron Maxwell, Richard Sherman. Deshaun Shedd wasn't bad for a given time here. He wasn't great, but they can get production out of that. We saw this year with Michael Jackson Jr.'s and everybody down the road, from Blasson Austins and John Reeds. This team can find a way to throw guys out there, teach them up in the scheme. The scheme kind of protects them a little bit. To your point, if they play man, this is a whole different ball of wax. But again, we're talking about them going to play man. I need to. That's the one thing of what Hurt said that I remain probably most pessimistic about what he said, Brendan. Okay, let's see how you do that. Who's running man? Which of your corners? Yeah, Trey Brown can do some of that, I guess. That is a little bit, but he's got to come back off the ligament. Your point on DJ Reed, that's zone-based stuff. You're not going to really want him running man, in my opinion, not at his size. I don't know on that one. They would, to me, almost need to they would need to bring in 2 man cover corners, say nothing of also needing to then address the slot position, find somebody over there that does more man stuff than Ugo can do even. You're kind of having to go pretty deep at that point to the corner position again, then at the cost of other places that are more dire need, in my opinion.
Kind of makes me think of like the heyday of the Oregon Ducks, when they would have so many good prospects, they could just kind of do almost line shifts where they would just constantly bring new players out there. You can't do that in the NFL.
No,
you can't have like the zone group of corners and then the man group of corners, and then they just keep shifting in and out. You can't do that.
No, you've got to make you can do some multi stuff in your scheme. Belichick's been famous for doing this with we'll do some zone and man, and he's the original 3-4-4-3 hybrid guy where he'd run that over the course of a game and change that up backwards and front to back. He did that though more because he was having a hard time getting his 3-4 guys in more than he loved the 4-3 scheme. He just everybody in the NFL was going 3-4, so he's like, to hell with it. I'm going to go the opposite direction because it's getting too hard to find my guys for what I want to do. But you do get to that point where it's like, okay, you get a guy who can play some man or play some zone, but can he do either of them very good? Is he one of those guys where, he can do them, but not really proficiently on either end?
Yeah. We call that Ethan Posick syndrome around here.
Right.
Just
exactly.
kind of okay at everything.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to find guys already that can do one good thing as it is. Asking to go find guys that can do 2 good things, it's to me a little bit of a leap.
Charles Raleigh, thank you for the $10. Killer Bees, I realize the O-line is very important, but what would the best O-line in history do against Aaron Donald and Von Miller? Tom Brady was under siege against those cats. Well, there's only one Aaron Donald, and he's already on the downslope of his career, so we're going to have less opportunities to worry about that going forward. Thank the Lord,
Mm-hmm. I got an answer for this. I got an answer.
You still got to address it. You can't just not address it just because it's going to get beat anyway.
Well, and there's different levels of pain that you have to suffer, right? Like Aaron Donald and Von Miller, there's going to be a cost of doing business to a certain degree against those guys, admittedly. But then you can also double team Donald a little more often and get your quarterback hit a little less often. You can also go get a true franchise left tackle that can deal with that blindside edge rusher so that it's not a free for all in Russell Wilson's face at every given point, like a guy like Chandler Jones has done coming off the blindside against him throughout the course of his whole entire career. And I'll give you the answer. Like, look, the 2005, our own team, I don't have to look across NFL history. I don't have to look across many NFL teams. We had Steve Hutchinson and Walter Jones here at the very same time. So I got Walter to take care of Vaughn. I got Hutch to take care of Donald one-on-one. I don't even have to double team them. And now I know what they're going to say to me on that is, well, those are Hall of Famers. How can you ever get? No, hold on. It's about investment. You're not always going to land, but you can choose to invest. You put a top 5 first-round pick on a left tackle at the time in the NFL when left tackles were not going in the top 5 very often. You put a top 20 pick on a left guard in the NFL at a time when left guards didn't go in the top 20. Investment. Put the investment into it. Ye shall seek and feel the returns of it. But it takes that first part, and that has been the part that's been missing with our team here in franchise a little bit.
Yeah, you heard it here first, everybody. Brandon wants to take a punter with our first pick this year.
That's right. I'm about special teams, man. It's the one thing that's going right.
No one's ever done it before, right? So, of course, you're going to get the best one if you do it. So
when they zig, we zag.
Exactly. Okay, so on the draft, so you said that there was a lot of good stuff on the defensive tackle. Will linebacker, you said. I really like that because there are not a lot of will linebackers I like in free agency this time around. Yeah. I want somebody who can cover. I want somebody who can at least not give up 1,000 yards in coverage like Jordan Brooks did. And Bobby Wagner would if you put him in that position, by the way. Just saying.
And these guys are that. These guys are. This is what they can do. They're the guys I'm looking at the top end. I haven't gotten into the mid tier or low end list of the guys, but just the guys in the top end are seen. If I'm seeing on the top end, it tells me probably the mid tier is going to be pretty good too. They can essentially do it all. There's a kid out of Georgia that can. I mean, he's an excellent blitzer, but then you watch him in coverage, and he has closing speed like a cornerback in coverage. Their specialist linebacker outside will guys that can only do coverage like a Jabril Cox last year with LSU that coming out and came into that role for the Cowboys as sort of their cover outside linebacker, and that will roll real specialized into it. There are those guys in this draft, and what I like about them is they're not the one trick pony. They can do both. And excellent tacklers on top, lay some thump, play with a little bit of an edge. I mean, it's kind of like everything you sort of want to draw up in a linebacker. Some of these wills in this draft have, and including the size, by the way, they're not just 5'10", 5'11", little fire hydrants, 6'1", 6'2", 6'3", rangy, sideline to sideline speed, just again, everything you could kind of want. So it may be, as much as it will piss a lot of Hawk fans off if they end up grabbing a will in the second round, it is where there is some strength in the draft in that respect from my standpoint, just at first look, first blush.
Yeah, I would not terribly mind that at all, especially if it means you're moving off of Bobby, which we'll see if they intend to do that, but I still think it's the right way to go at this point. So if you've got Brooks moving to the middle, which hopefully is the case, and then you've got the Sam spot, we're going to probably experiment a little bit there. I still have hopes that Darrell Taylor can do it for a bit. Maybe you're going to see Mayoa do it a little bit, and he's not atrocious at it. He's just kind of whatever. And then at that will spot, you need somebody who can cover. I would love it to be the rookie, even if you have to spend the second round pick on it. I don't hate that.
Yeah. I mean, and especially if it's a guy that's got like this kid from Georgia was the kid I was going to in my mind, and he's with his blitz ability. If you're looking to go, again, talking a second ago, like we were, if you're looking to go for more of an attack-based defense, then what you would want to do at that point is bring in guys that can blitz, that have that in their game. And that's something that you haven't been doing. You do it with this guy, and he gives you the coverage ability. It's sort of like they give you the whole meal in one. You get the entree, you get the dessert, you get it all, rather than you having to flop out guys like you did with the KJ Jordan Brooks year, right? Remember that, where you would have Jordan as the rundown defender, KJ over at the Sam, and then Jordan leaves the field to overcome some of his coverage stuff, and then you'd put KJ back at the will on passing downs. We wouldn't have to do that with some of these guys. They can just go all the way whole hog. I was trying to see if I could find the guy, but
The Georgia guy, is it Quay Walker?
no, it's gonna be the other one.
Oh shoot, I can't remember his name.
I know that it's driving me crazy because I was looking at him. I got it right here. Christian Harris.
There we go. Thank you.
Christian Harris. Just, I mean, absolutely. I was watching that tape last night, Brendan. I was just like, dude, this guy's awesome. And he probably will go even potentially in the first round, I think. But if he was to slide to second round, he'd be an interesting prospect out of Alabama.
Right. And I hesitate to say this, but I just don't want it to be KJ Wright. I would really prefer not to, because I don't think he can cover that well anymore. Like, he was getting beat up in coverage for the Raiders. They had to throw him out there in one game against the Chargers because of injuries, and the Chargers were just picking him apart in coverage. I don't think he can do that anymore. I don't know if you saw, but earlier today there was a thing released from KJ Wright. He was talking about his experience leaving Seattle in free agency, where he was like, I just want to come back, man. Give me a reduced role. I don't care. And they were like, no. And everyone feels bad for KJ right now. I'm kind of like, well, I kind of actually think that's probably a good thing that we were willing to do that. I'm just not feeling it the way some of these fans are. I don't know how you stand on it, but to me, it's like, if you don't feel like he has a role to play on this defense anymore, then don't get sentimental over this.
That's the word that you just touched the proper appropriate word here. And I don't hate on fans that want to keep a guy that's been here through their career and they've fallen in love with the player and they think he's a great guy. And just, why can't he just stay here? I understand that thought process. But as I also say, when you let sentimental drive your decision-making, you will soon find yourself at the bottom of a division. You will soon find yourself in bad cap space, giving out contracts to reward for past performance as opposed to what you're going to get in the future. And that's not how great teams are built. And Brendan, we both align on this 100%. We want to see a great team on the football field, above sentimentality, above celebrating the players appropriately, above giving them the graceful exit out the door where they can feel appropriately loved and cherished in all the ways that they want. We want to see a great team. And maybe that makes us spoiled, maybe whatever it makes us, that's how we roll. That's the way we roll. And so there's times this comes up with the franchise where the sentimental stuff comes up and they end up letting it bite them a little bit. I can make the argument a little bit. You roll with $8.6 million, I think, on KG on his final year. As good as that final year was, I don't know, $8.6 million is what you should be spending for a Will linebacker or a Sam linebacker. So I did see what he had to say on that. I thought it was interesting, Brendan, some of his comments about, if they would have offered the veteran minimum, would he have taken it here versus no? I would have then gone to the Raiders on the veteran minimum. If that's what the two offers that were on the table, the Raiders ended up offering $5 million for his services last year is what they had to put on the table for him. I wouldn't have wanted to spend $5 million on KJ last year. I don't see the return of that on the football field. And again, good player, great player for a time here, but at this point in time in his career, replaceable. And a guy in that interview shows you they're not willing to take less money. Players aren't, even a guy like that, been here 10 years. We paid you 2 different big contracts, like you've made your money. Will you be willing to take a little bit less? No, pay me now. Pay me. Well, we can't go $5 million for you, Kate. That's where fans get mad at the front office, Brendan, but it's kind of, I'm with you. This is one of those places I'll support John and Pete on. But this is also key, Brendan, because we're facing this right now, this offseason, right? Same decisions coming down the track this offseason. That's why this is a pertinent discussion, because Bobby's coming up. Right. And you have the same sort of decision to make with him. Do you let sentimental drive your approach, or do you look at it and go, what's the smart route for the team? What helps us make the team the best? Not what's best for our past or celebrating the past or, again, graceful exits. What makes us the best for this upcoming year?
Right. And the last thing I want to ask about, I know you said running back is just kind of sort of okay, but I do want to take a running back at some point because I want to get rid of Carson. I want to bring back Penny. I want to sign a guy like a Marlon Mack or even a Leonard Fournette if he's cheaper than I'm expecting him to be. Mm-hmm. But I feel like you need a little bit more. Travis Homer's good in his role. Maybe DJ Dallas can be something, but I'm not willing to bet on it yet. I haven't seen it. So anything catching your eye at running back that makes sense to work within that group with a guy like Penny and maybe a guy like a Marlon Mack?
Yeah. I mean, the thing with, you're not going to see a first round running back taken this year. So that's take that right off the board. No Najee Harris this year, no Christian McCaffrey. There's no first round running back going. Um, there are those guys into the 3rd to 6th round realm. And like I've told you, Brent, in the past, I treat it almost like every year, if I had my say on it with running backs, I would just take one every year from like maybe the 3rd, but even up like 4th to like the 6th round. I would take one every year and try to find my James Robinson, my Chris Carson, find that diamond in the rough that's there that I can get a couple of years of production out of on the cheap rookie contract. And then just, I'm going to miss on some, right? There'll be some years where I get the guy in the 5th round and he ain't nothing. But then there's the years where if I'm doing it consistently and picking from that realm, what do I care? It's a 4th, 5th round pick. I mean, shoot, we did this with receivers for years, right? Where we get guys in the 4th round and not even make it past training camp. Amara Darbo and Chris Harper. So if we've done it for receiver, why can't we do it for running back? Especially because the returns on it are, when you do get a dude who's a dog on that 3 years of cheap rookie contract, that's tremendous production for that kind of player in that role. And yeah, there are those guys like that. There's Hassan of the Michigan, who I've said is a little bit like a Chris Carson clone, who easily could slide into that 4th, 5th down range. There's the kid from Florida who's 5'9", got some elements to him of a little bit of like Thomas Rawls style to him. If we're looking for past guys that may make them gravitate towards those guys, there are those guys that you're not going to be picking them high, Brendan. I guess what I'm saying, you're not looking at him. To me, you shouldn't be looking for running back even in the 2nd round of this draft. That is, to me, not good value, because you'll have other positions stacked up with better quality there facing you there, maybe even the 3rd round, you could say, Brendan. But yeah, 4th, 5th, 6th round, I think you can still find those guys that it's a gamble. There's no guarantees at that point, right? They're not as clean, but they've got potential still. And as we saw with Carson, some of these guys they picked in that realm, there's reasons sometimes they drop. It's not always that they don't have talent or ability there.
Right. The phrase Chris Carson clone kind of makes me pause, because I don't know if a Chris Carson type is going to be a great fit in this offense. One of the reasons why I want to move off Carson is I don't think he's a great fit for this offense. It's a much bigger concern to me that I don't think his neck is ever going to be 100% again. But it does occur to me, I don't know about that fit. I don't know if the power back thing's going to be a great fit, especially with the new offensive line coach. How do you feel about that?
The Rams have always consistently had, they've got their Sony Michels, they've got their Cam Akers right now, right? But then they got a Darrell Henderson too. So, I mean, Henderson's not necessarily a fleet of foot back. He's more of a little bit of a hammer, and they've always had at least a little of a hammer there. They had the little rotund guy there in their Super Bowl year that they go, right? With he's kind of the chunky dude. So they have always had a little bit of the counter approaches going there, even though they've had the Gurleys or the Akers that are more of those lithe kind of mover kind of running backs, guys that can move in space and break tackles and stuff. So I think you do need a little bit of a balance on that to a degree. I'm also falling back in line with the fact that Carroll, if he's got a fascination or obsession that for one given type of personnel type, I think Marshawn Lynch really set that mold in his head. And he's become a little bit transfixed by it a little bit as it pertains to the running back position and just liking those type of backs that are like that. And with Hassan, he's going to see so many flashes to me, I think, of what he saw with Carson, that it's a potential. I could see how it could make the two end up marrying together on that a little bit.
Okay, so that's a pretty good introductory look at the draft, I think, because we don't want to get too deep into things. We still got a combine to watch, and we're going to learn a lot at the combine. Excited for it this year. It's always in Indy, right? They always do it at the Lucas Oil.
It's the last year in Indy this year.
Oh, really? All right. Okay, so I'll probably be making some videos about that when that swings around, but I think we're going to go ahead and leave it at there for this show. And as the weeks go by, we'll have more to say about the specifics. We'll go deeper into certain positions. So before we end this show, though, I want to talk about some of the things happening in our division, because there were a few days where we got to dream about a future NFC West with no Aaron Donald or Sean McVay, but I don't think that's going to happen. But here's something that can happen. Kyler Murray is not happy about something, and that's not a surprise if you take a look at his face. He looks like he's always pissed off about something. But things are not going terribly well in Arizona right now with him, and it sounds like things could be approaching a breaking point. What do you make of all this?
Well, the thing we have to start building into this is what we call the NFC West effect. And that is that no matter how amazing or optimistic suddenly something might turn, just be rest assured that it's going to quickly angle into a direction that you did not consider, that twists it right on its ass. And what I mean by this is that Mr. Kyler played in Texas. Let's see if you see where I'm going with this. Played in Texas, high school, right? Wants a contract extension, who needs to find a team at that point if they're going to move Kyler to a team that will pay him that contract extension. Then a team that will also have assets they can give to Arizona to make them feel like they're in a better position than they were with Kyler there. Is there a team out there, Brendan, you can think of that might be a team to be able to hit those qualificative marks?
I mean, I know where you're going with this. I do. But, I mean, they would have to show a commitment to bringing in some really good players if you're talking about the Houston Texans, because that's not a prestigious franchise at this point.
But from Kyler's standpoint, he's a little bit of an unusual dude. I think we can kind of, he strikes us as that. He's not your traditional quarterback kind of guy out there. Maybe he thinks of this a little bit different, gets to play closer to home, gets to get paid. That's the other thing. The Cardinals control this situation to a degree with Kyler right now, where they go, Kyler, you're 3 years in, you got 2 years left on your rookie deal. You got 2 years of franchising if we want to do it to you. That's your situation you're in. And while I think there would be other teams that would be willing to pay Kyler, so that doesn't just make it to where it would be only the Houston Texans. The key on this is that it's that aspect of the NFC West being that all these teams are in on now. All these teams are pushing for the now. Nobody wants to rebuild. Everybody is trying to go for this division. And if the Cardinals saw that situation where we move Kyler, who we don't have a lot of faith in, we bring in Watson, who can run Kingsbury's offense, who then we look at as an improvement over the top of Murray. Hell, they may not even have to pay Watson on a new deal. All the bonus money leaks out. He comes in pretty relatively cheap at that point on their books. Only the base salary is what they're on the hook for at that point. Yeah, they get some blowback, but do all the grandmas and granddads in Arizona really care about Watson? I mean, do you think that that's a place that doesn't strike me that would be all up in arms if they were to make that trade? I'm just saying, maybe I'm getting jaded on this, Brendan. You know what I mean? Maybe I'm getting jaded on this. I've got nightmares of Brady going to the 49ers this offseason. I'm just seeing it at every turn going. It's just getting as hard as it possibly can get. But
yeah.
I
don't know if you heard this, but there's a rumor that he's demanding the Cardinals trade for CeeDee Lamb because he wants to play with CD because they played together in college. But you're not going to exactly pry that guy away from the Cowboys all that easily. And he has to know that, right?
I mean, what is the trade that they could even? They're not going to be able to move. Cowboys aren't going to take Budda Baker. Jones is a free agent now. They've got nobody on that front seven other than a linebacker that they took out of Clemson a couple years ago. But the Cowboys have that already in Micah Parsons. Okay, offensive side of the ball, Cowboys aren't taking DeAndre Hopkins at this point in his career. CeeDee Lamb's younger, cheaper, so that's not happening. What do the Cardinals have to offer the Cowboys? I mean, they don't even have an early first round pick, which would be I mean, it's going to take multiple first round picks at that point to get CeeDee Lamb. And he wants to get, no way. They can't pull that off.
Yeah. If it's true, and as of right now, it is a rumor, but if it's true, there's this one Cowboys fan I watch on YouTube named Mark Holmes, and he actually had a really good analogy for the supposed trade demand for CeeDee Lamb. He compared it to the scene in Die Hard when Hans Gruber is demanding the release of a bunch of terrorists around the world, and he doesn't actually care about it. He's just trying to distract them. So his theory was like, Kyler wants out. He's just going to start making ridiculous demands until the team throws their hands up and goes, okay, fine, go. Get out of here. He's just asking for stuff that he knows is impossible because he doesn't care. He doesn't actually want it. He just wants to get out. And apparently he feels like the team is blaming him for the second half collapse last year. And he's taking that personally. It's not a good situation. There's a lot of stuff being said.
It's definitely, when it gets to this, as we've learned last year with our quarterback situation, it's a relationship that's very, never fully settled. It can always go up and down. You saw Brady with Arians in his first year and some of the tumultuousness through the first 2 months before they finally got on the same page. But when it goes sideways, it's starting to go sideways right now. It's hard to reel it back in. The Russell Wilson situation never went fully sideways last offseason. This is getting pretty close to sidewaysville, with Murray. It's taking down social media accounts, the rumors of this stuff we're hearing, that the team throwing shade at him with being a bad leader. I mean, I'm sure you've seen some of that.
Yeah, I saw that.
Shots are getting fired here. And you really can't put the bullet back in the gun when you start firing kind of this many bullets. The thing with this, though, too, goes to what's, from the Cardinals standpoint, if it is to remain competitive in this division, what are the moves you can go make at that point to move it? If you're not going to give them, because they don't certainly seem like they want to give him the contract. And I think this is all about money, Brendan, at the end of the day. I don't think it's, I think he could even be saying they're blaming me on this and to paint himself as a victim on this. But to me, it's comes down to the brass bottom line tax on this, that I want my contract extension. No, we don't want to do it. Then trade me to somebody who's going to pay me my $150 million and my $45 to $50 million a year that I want to make. I mean, that's a significant amount of money. That's huge money. So I think that's what, at the end of the day, he's really, all this other stuff I think is a little bit talk to just sort of, quarterbacks can't just come out and be like, oh, I need to get my money right now. They really can't say that. So it's this roundabout way to kind of get there, I think.
Yeah. Well, Kyler really has to do that because he's not going to last that long in the NFL.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's looking at Lamar Jackson, maybe starting to wear down a little bit after being really used a lot. He's seeing some other guys in the league that haven't gotten paid, and it's not necessarily worked out with them now. I mean, Dak had the really close situation with his leg breaking, and that could have gone, in a bad place for him where he didn't get his money, and the Cowboys pushed him out as long as they could possibly put him out. So I can't, from Kyler's standpoint, I can get him wanting his money early after your third year. That's the CBA. The owners negotiated this. They don't like it. They can negotiate it out, but they've allowed for it to be in there. You got to deal with it. The thing with this, though, is that he doesn't have, outside of all this kind of background stuff, the players really kind of screwed themselves in the last CBA with their one point of leverage they had, which was the ability to hold out. You no longer can hold out anymore. It's $60,000 a day to hold out in the NFL. And there was not one holdout, if you notice, this last NFL season. Not one player was willing to spend $60,000 a day. This really starts to remove the leverage from players like Kyler in this situation.
Well, now they just do hold-ins where they show up and just don't do anything. Which
exactly.
I have a feeling that's going to go away the next time the CBA is negotiated. By the way, I don't think the NFL is going to stand for that.
No.
But here's the question that I have about this whole Kyler thing, because we can sit here and laugh about it because it's funny.
It is funny.
But okay, Kyler has made 2 Pro Bowls. He has led the team to the playoffs once. He, I think, won Rookie of the Year his first year. Mm-hmm. He's obviously immensely talented. His stats over the first 3 years of his career are good. His rushing stats also add to it. Mm-hmm. But he has a losing record for his career. He's 0-1 in the playoffs, never won a playoff game. Never won the division, and also a guy who misses time. He gets hurt. He plays the second half of seasons through injuries, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. So we are talking about a guy who is not exactly a absolute blue chipper or a guaranteed superstar. Mm-hmm. So as Seahawks fans, what would you rather have? Would you rather have the Cardinals have to trade Kyler Murray for whatever they can get for him? Or would you rather the Cardinals have to give him that $45 million a year extension and marry themselves to him for the foreseeable future?
Ooh, what a good question. I'm going to go with the first, and it's also going to be on the heels of a question back to you on this. When you look at Kyler in his play and getting beat up, for instance, and obviously we know that mobile quarterbacks get hit more often than non-mobile quarterbacks. Has the Arizona Cardinals done so, like what I've talked to you about with wanting to see with rookie quarterbacks? Have they done enough to put and assemble a very good offensive line in front of him?
Well, they paid DJ Humphries, and he's actually been better than I thought he was going to be at left tackle.
Right.
But other than that, they're okay. I think they benefit tremendously from the spread offense that they run.
Mm-hmm. I agreed. But that's, to me, I look at it as very much an equivalent situation with what you've had here with Russell Wilson. We've had Dwayne Brown here. He's got Humphries. But then much like what we did with Gabe Jackson, they did last year with Hudson. I mean, it's almost very similar, right? They go to Hudson, who's a center for the Raiders. Oh, we'll get this aging guy who's past his best days. It'll be a name for the fan base to we got Hudson. It's an upgrade. Oh, you'll get Gabe Jackson, who's past his best days, who's been moved out of his natural position where he was at his best. But, it's Gabe Jackson. It's a name. And my point on this is a little bit of, and I'm not a Kyler Murray backer on this by any measure of this, Brendan, but this is why I go to option one on your question, is because I'm not so sure that Kyler Murray doesn't still have really great play within his game. What happens when you give him an upper level offensive line? The thing that I say you've got to do for these young quarterbacks, when you put them behind these crap offensive lines, they look like crap. It's no coincidence. Put him behind a great offensive line, a guy with great talent, and he'll show you the moon. And right now, they don't have any excuses, Brendan. They don't have the excuses we have with Russell Wilson, the Cardinals, in this respect, to play this game the same way. Because they have Kyler on the rookie deal. We're paying Russell Wilson. We had to do it by necessity. They're doing it by choice to not really beef up that offensive line. And I wonder if you gave him an offensive line, if the Cardinals learned that lesson, that slow lesson that we have just been so slow to come around to, maybe he comes out and starts to show you something where it's like, oh, now he's got 6-7 seconds to stand back there, and then he can scramble if pressure comes at that point. That part scares me still a little bit with him. Though I agree with you, I don't think he's going to be a long-lasting player in this league. I don't think that build's going to allow for him to play 15, 16 years in the sport.
Right. I gotta say that you haven't given Kyler the offensive line, but you have given him a modernized offense with the Kingsbury stuff. And
Sure.
I'm not saying Kingsbury's a great coach. I don't know if he is yet or not. I don't know what to make of him, honestly. But you have given him a modernized offense that Wilson has not gotten. So I don't think it's entirely one-to-one.
No, it's a very general comparison, and it's just as much as it's my, with me, it's one of my little. It gets stuck in my craw a little bit where teams get the cart before the horse, like you see with Burrow in Cincinnati right now, where you get a guy that just gets the ever-loving crap beat out of him, but they got their quarterback, and it drives me crazy a little bit because it's like you don't have to go that route with it. You can build up the line. It's just that you're trying to get cute with it. It's like, well, he's mobile and he can move around guys when they go after him. And so, well, yeah, but then he wears down over the course of the season because he's constantly trying to run away from guys who are not being blocked properly. I mean, they brought J.R. Sweezy in there after he was here for starting for their first year with them. And it's just, he can't pass protect Sweezy, so it's the one I'm not certain on it, Brendan. I mean, I'm not sure that Kyler could be in that great player if he gave him that line, but I do think that that's a little bit of probably something that impacts this for me on this. Like, for instance, he's had DeAndre Hopkins, but when you look at him with having Hopkins in the game and not injured, he's got this, he's got like a 70 win percentage, 75 win percentage when Hopkins is in the game, when he's come on, but Hopkins is injured a lot. And when Hopkins is gone and he's losing a couple targets, then he gets a little lessened,
Right. Charles Riley, thank you for the $5 once again. Killer Bees, your thoughts on the Hawks being ranked at number 23 in the league as of today? That's probably about where they would have ranked at the end of the season last year, and there's been no free agency or draft, so I don't know. Why are we doing power rankings right now? The season ended like 4 days ago.
I don't know. It gets people talking about it, I guess. I think it's just, to Brendan's point, it's laziness. Somebody looked at where we ranked last year and they extrapolated the numbers and like, oh, they're 23 last year. We'll put up 23 this year. That's plausible. And look, we haven't done any moves, so there's nothing to necessarily build on, but it is laziness and just they're just pulling numbers out.
Right. And I think that's about all we can talk about. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like we can sit here and talk about how Aaron Donald and Sean McVay are retiring. That would have been nice. But
that would have been great.
Yeah. One thing that I always hear from athletes, I talked about this a little bit the other day, was part of winning the Super Bowl or championship or whatever is defending it the next year. So just because you've won the championship doesn't necessarily mean the job is done. You do want to come back and see how well you can defend it the next year. So that alone makes me feel like those guys are not going anywhere right now. I'll just leave it at that. No. I don't know if you have anything to add there.
I don't. It's always been said, players, they tell these guys that are considering retirement, don't do what you're thinking you want to do right at the end of the year when your body's hurting. Give yourself a month for the body to recover. And then you're going to get that old itch again, and you're going to want to play, especially if you're still a young player. And it's so few and far between those players that have retired really, really earlier than they possibly could have. And it's usually with a crap organization or a crap situation that's driving them to go to that retirement. Neither which is the case in regards to Stafford or not Stafford, but McVay or Donald right now. So I do think McVay's probably not going to be one of your coach till he's, like Carroll, at least 70. He strikes me as a guy in his 40s. He'll probably be done, take a break, and maybe come back again like Dick Vermeil did. But he doesn't strike me as a guy who's going to be into this for 20 years. But Donald's not going anywhere. We're going to have to deal with this monster for at least another probably 2 or 3 years minimum.
Yeah, although he is on the downslope of his career. We actually played pretty well against him this year, I think. He didn't do a ton in the 2 games we played against
He
him.
broke Wilson.
Yeah, but that was more of a fluky play than him just beating the crap out of Wilson for 4 quarters. And like that was more of a I don't know. To me, that's a little different than him getting 3 sacks in a game. That's just his hand getting in a weird spot.
Yeah.
But I think we did better against him than we've typically done. And for the first time in a couple years, he wasn't clearly the best defensive player in the league.
No, it's true. I mean, he wasn't far off though either, and he did have a knee injury through some of the year that he was fighting, including that second game he played us. There was the knee was a little dodgy, but to your point, he wasn't as good as he has been in the past this year. But he was just at such a special state through the last few years. I mean, he was playing as good as any defensive tackle in NFL history. But he still is a game wrecker, and we still need to figure out a plan for him. Like
Yeah.
we can't just ride with what we've been
Yeah,
doing.
he'll look a little less dominant when he loses Von Miller as his rushing buddy, which hopefully
Mm.
happens because they shouldn't be able to afford it unless they do more cap voodoo, which I guess is possible. But at a certain point, don't you just go enough is enough? I
Well,
don't
I
know.
mean, I don't. To me, it's the Stafford contract that faces them as much as being over the cap, which is a problem. You can get under the cap with moves and stuff, but when you also have to then go pay your quarterback, say nothing of needing to probably go locate a new left tackle as well. That's the part where how do you get back around to Von Miller on that then? I don't see how you do it, especially because you're already paying Leonard Floyd the big money. So you really just don't have the ducats to get
Right.
it done.
Right. All right. I think that'll do for this show. It was a pretty interesting week for Seahawks fans. The coaching staff looks completely different, and I'm optimistic about where things are going. Oh, real quick here, Charles Riley, thank you for the $5. All these coaches know Tony Romo is making $20 million a year in a booth with Nance. That changes things knowing coaches work 24 hours a day. Yeah,
Mhm.
being a coach sounds pretty miserable. I will say that.
Yeah.
Like the hours must be terrible. How much you have to work.
And it's
I don't envy that.
It seems like you do when you put the extra hours in, it seems like coaches can feel the effect of it too, or the benefits of it, which causes them
Hmm.
to keep doing it as well. And yeah, you look, you can only go that hard for so long before you're going to wear yourself out. And I just, even if you love the sport, it's going to, the stress, all the media stuff you got to deal with, like, they just go to a booth and talk about the game. I mean, yeah, I could see why that'd be a lot for making better, more money, Brendan, right? To his point on that, making more money than you're making as a coach to go up into the booth sometimes.
Yeah, a part of me does kind of wonder if this ends with the Rams giving McVay some unprecedented like 20
20
million
million.
dollar a year
Yeah.
contract to stay. That could be why he's saying this stuff just to try to get as
Wow.
much money as he can.
We come back to this is the same thing with Kyler, right? I think this is a little
Hmm.
bit of the same thing with Donald, frankly, Brendan. I think that the lot that we're hearing all this stuff that's talk about, well, it's a good time to go out, or I want to take a break. But I think we always double back around. It's always follow the money. You know what I mean? And I think both
Yeah.
of those the guys are all due. Every one of these three guys are probably wanting a new contract, and all due for one. Donald's about due for a new contract. McVay's definitely due for a big contract. So, and I know I've heard the last negotiations were somewhat strained between McVay and the team coming off the
Hmm.
Super Bowl loss, right? Where his star wasn't as bright necessarily. It was bright, but just not what it is right now.
Yeah. All right, so I think that's going to do it for this week. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. We had 200 people in here at one point. It's 160 right now.
Woo!
So appreciate everybody coming out. Thank you, Brandon, for coming out this week as well. We will do it again next week on your channel. Maybe something big will happen, but if not, we'll find something to dive into. So we'll be seeing you guys. And as always, before we sign off, I want to say go Hawks.
Go Hawks.